Hey everybody, I'm Marianne Shiozawa, and this is the You're Doing Great Mom podcast. Here's what's coming up on today's episode.
And so we go into the hospital in Nova Scotia, and I'm just like, oh my God, you could lick the floors. They're so clean. You know, and they have a totally different setup. It's all triage. So they have emergency medical tech, ambulance people on the front door, not nurses. And they decide the priority if you get seen. And because we're sitting there with a 6-year-old baby, they took us in 20 minutes. It was really great. In an hour, I had all my tests done. They're like, oh, you're pregnant. I'm like, ah. I'm like 6 weeks postpartum. I haven't even thought about sex yet. You know, I'm holding the 6-week-old baby. And he's like, no, well, you're pregnant. I was like, that's so not possible. And so then they went, uh-oh. So they did an ultrasound, and then they said, okay, well, there's another placenta still kicking there. What happened with the placenta? And so it was whole, everything was intact, everything was great. He's like, well, you've obviously had a miscarriage. I'm like, okay. And that's when we realized that Abby had been a twin.
When I ask women to be on my podcast, I always make sure I tell them that I want it as real as can be. I definitely don't want anything sugar-coated. That's the whole reason why I created this podcast for women, for moms to hear about what really happens behind what we don't see and what we don't hear about. Because no one really talks about this real mommy stuff. I mean, why would we start spilling out all our stresses and traumas to each other? It's just not normal, and it's not natural in conversation. Which brings me to introducing my new fabulous friend, Maryellen Stevens. We met at a chiropractic seminar earlier this year. We knew about each other from Facebook on several different chiropractic groups, and I knew she was someone I wanted to meet in person eventually. I always liked what she posted, and she seemed to have a ton of knowledge about the subject that we are both passionate about, which, for those of you who don't know, is health and chiropractic. So when she and I met, I was super thrilled to finally make our connection. Maryellen is a mother of 2 daughters. She is also a chiropractor who has her own successful practice in Cornwall. I would describe Maryellen as someone who has always been confident, independent, and grounded. It shows in our conversation when she describes her story about being a mother. She openly shares about her home births, her 3 miscarriages, her divorce, and how she persisted throughout these times of challenge and adversity. She's been a single mother for almost 10 years, and I love her resilience, passion, and determination, and her drive for living an extraordinary life. I am so happy to know Maryellen, and I had a great conversation with her. If you want to reach out to Maryellen, stay tuned at the end of this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Today, I've got Maryellen Stevens. Thanks for being on my podcast, Maryellen.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi. So, it's been kind of a runaround to get us together on the podcast. And it's for a good reason because, you'll probably get into it, but you are a single mom and a chiropractor. And we met in January, and it was such a pleasure to meet you. And we've got a lot of stuff in common, both being American. And I just wanted to...
I'm not American, I'm Canadian.
Oh my gosh! Oh my god! Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I'm from Toronto.
I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah, it's the border accent, but I've been over here 20 years,
That's
so
right.
I think that it's a very broad accent after you've been gone for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. Big apologies. Huge apologies.
Well, actually, that'll make a lot of people over here feel better because they're always saying, "Are you American?" I said, "No, Canadian." And they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, it's okay. I've got American friends. They're okay."
Actually, I feel embarrassed to say I'm an American because we've got such a dorky president.
Well, the UK doesn't have much on that side at the moment either. Actually, there are a few countries that are struggling with that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's true. So, why don't you just start talking about your experience in becoming a mother? And I know we talked about this when we met briefly, But yeah, like what brings you over here? I mean, did you have your babies in Toronto? When did you have them? All that good stuff.
Okay, well, basically, I came over in '96 to study at Bournemouth at the college there. There was only one college in Canada at the time, and I knew I didn't want to study in the States because of the prerequisite issue and because of the 4 years of exams to practice afterwards. Whereas here, you just do a clinic exit exam, which just makes more sense. So I came over here in '96, studied there. I spent an extra year working in Southampton and in Wimborne. And then I came down to Cornwall after that and worked for somebody for a year, and then opened my own practice in Redruth after that. I didn't think at that point about kids, really. I wasn't really in family mode. I was a late studier. I didn't graduate till I was 30. And I was quite happy to be working finally and really enjoying things and really loving all the good things that chiropractic had to offer. And I think I was extremely lucky because I met Neil Davies in '99, the year before I went into the clinic year, and did my first pediatric course with him, which just completely blew me away. And from that point, that's when I really knew that pediatrics was for me, and I really wanted to spend time with infants and children rather than focusing on low back pain, which is what a lot of people think that chiropractors do. And then family-wise, I met my now ex-husband at a yoga class. Oh. And we did loads and loads and loads of yoga with lots of Anusara yoga at that point, which was fantastic, with Bridget Woods Kramer. And we married a year later. And it was a good couple of years before he kind of talked me into having kids. I just wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think I was 35 when I had Abby, and 30, almost 40 when I had Holly. Mm-hmm. But I suppose because I was so into the career side of things, and I think for chiropractic women, we get so driven to really be in the practice, and we make a lot of it about us. Yeah. Which can be a really big problem, especially because a lot of us are self-employed, or we feel like we have to be there and we're irreplaceable. Yeah. Yeah. But I had a lot of very fortunate life lessons in between. About 3 months after I opened my own practice, I got deported. And,
my God, that's right. You did tell me about that.
So talk about lessons and how to let go, and, you know.
Yeah. What year was that again?
Especially the practice. I mean, it literally had been open 3 months. 2003.
Oh my God.
So, no, 2002? 2002, 2003.
How did they find out? How did they find out?
Well, because I was still studying. I was doing a master's in pediatrics. So I was still a student. So they just renewed my student visa, even though I was working full time. Mm-hmm. And they shouldn't have. What they should have done is said, no, the master's is part-time. It doesn't qualify you as a student, but that's not what happened. So essentially it actually was their fault, because from them, they made that decision, not me. And then, a year into it, they kind of went, oh, no, that's not right. And off you go. So in the middle of all that, I had gotten married anyway, but I was still deported, and I was gone for almost 8 weeks with different people coming into the practice saying, anybody free this week? You can cover the practice. Wow. So it was a kind of a comedy of errors, but it was really interesting because there were some amazing chiropractors around at that time. I mean, Ann Jensen was one of them that covered, Carrie Elston covered.
Oh, cool.
Who else there? Sherry, I can't remember her last name, from the States as well. So quite a few Americans were coming and going at the time. And but people who had been in practice for 20 years, who were just kind of traveling about, and and it was pre-registration days, so they didn't have to be registered with the GCC, right? Because that was 2004 before that came in full force. So it was really easy to get cover, and really amazing people. So the patients that I had started seeing got to have this amazing care by these people, so I didn't have to stress about it, other than somebody just had to be there. And my first CA that was there was just amazing. So I knew in her hands everything was fine. And it was an exercise in just letting go and just accepting that I couldn't actually do anything about it. So all I wanted was for people to get good care. And that's what happened. And that's what I focused on. So once all that settled down, it was another couple of years before I considered having kids. And then I had Abby in 2006. The pregnancy was amazing. I was doing like 6-8 hours of yoga a week, just regular classes. I was so fit. It was really nice. I wasn't the second time around, but the first time was pretty cool. And she was back to back.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you getting adjusted throughout the pregnancy?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
I got adjusted loads, and I had really good care with my associate, Mary, who was there at the time. And I was very fortunate as well that I had gotten to know some of the local midwives, and I managed to do quite a few home births.
Oh, nice.
As kind of like in a doula position, but also as a chiropractor adjusting through the labor.
Yeah.
And really learned a lot about the different stages of labor, and especially about the transition stage. And Neil teaches a cranial technique for natural pain control, which is phenomenal.
Oh, really?
It's really easy to learn, and I teach it to the partners, the midwives. I've done the AGM a few times, and it's just easy to do, but it really does make a difference to the pain of the contraction. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You'll have to teach me.
I will. It's really easy to learn.
Yeah.
It's really easy to learn.
Awesome.
And,
are you doing any teaching, by the way? You are or you said that you were helping?
Not at the moment.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to help Dorta because there's so many kids doing this course. So I'm just going to go and help. But I did teach at Barcelona for a little while. I did a series of seminars out there at Barcelona College, and I taught in Ireland as well, just doing private seminars. But at the moment, things are just a bit crazy. So
no, I totally get it.
I haven't had the space to do it.
So so Abby was back to back.
Yeah, Abby was back to back. And so it was funny because we had just moved house, as you do, all pregnant women. Oh my God, I'm 8 months pregnant. I need to move house.
Why does that happen?
I don't know, but we all do it to ourselves.
We all do it.
It's a nesting thing.
Yeah.
It's nesting, and at our place, we were living in a very thin walled terrace on the beach. And then we just moved out to this little country stone cottage, and it was really nice and private and stuff. And I knew, because I wanted the home birth, that I just wanted the space to be. So, and I remember waking up in the morning going, oh, I feel like I'm different, and realized I was in labor. And I just kind of got up and wandered around. Of course, it was the day that the BT man was turning up to put the phone line in, and we'd waited 3 weeks to get a phone line. And I was like, oh my God. And about 4 hours into it, I'm like, when is he going? Oh my God. Because I was really starting to feel it at that stage.
Yeah.
And the midwife turned up around noon and said, oh, you've got ages yet, blah, blah, blah. And of course, because the average is 1 centimeter an hour for the first baby, isn't it? So it's up to 12 hours. And sure enough, she came at like quarter to 12 midnight. And,
okay.
It was really interesting because, again, the lady who was supposed to do the maternity cover didn't pass the GCC exam. Which was in place at that point in 2006. So a week before I went off, I was supposed to go on maternity leave. I couldn't go on maternity leave. So I worked straight up to the point where I was almost going to deliver. And
oh my God.
Yeah. And then finally these people from Australia came through, Lucky and Vanessa. And Lucky was covering the practice, and Vanessa was at home with us, and they were staying with us. And so Lucky had gone off to work. Vanessa was out touring around, and I was in labor all day. And she came home around 6 o'clock, and I was in full-on labor at that stage, in the tub, out of the tub, in the tub, out of the tub, because I had planned a water birth. But with the back-to-back, you just got to keep moving. And so I had to get out of the tub and keep moving because I was just too relaxed, and it was slowing the labor down. And so she was amazing, though. She just came in. She was just invisible and kept the water temperature. I learned a lot too about that. You need to have an extra person on hand to do all that stuff because you can think about it.
Yeah.
And then, so she was great. And then just as Abby was starting to crown, her head got stuck.
Oh.
One of the midwives, and again, I knew these women because I had done births with them. And one of the ones that didn't know me very well has just said, look, you need to start pushing. I'm like, I've got the hang of the pushing thing now. I know what it feels like. And this contraction isn't going to be strong enough, so I'm not going to waste my energy. And she's looking at me going, what? I'm like, no, seriously, I'm not wasting my energy. This is a little contraction. I'm going to wait for a big one, and then I'll push her head out. And she looked at me, she goes, if you don't start pushing, I'm going to get the scissors. And I looked at her, and the other midwife is going, "Oh shit!" And I looked at her and went, "You pick up those scissors, and I'm going to stick them in your eye." And the other midwife was on the floor, killing herself laughing. She was just like, "I knew it. I knew this was going to happen." And so, sure enough, the big contraction came. I really gave it a good push, and out she came.
Wow. And were you in the water at that time?
No, no,
okay.
on the side of the sofa. And then after the head came out, I was kind of laid back, and then she had to be turned because she had a bit of shoulder dystocia as well. Mm-hmm. So she came out, and then so that was great. Everything was fine.
What position were you in on your were you on your hands and knees or?
No, I was kind of like semi-reclined, so kind of about 45 degrees. Mm-hmm. So just kind of sitting on the edge kind of thing.
Okay.
And then she came out, and it was really good, but she wouldn't latch on. Uh-huh. And Mary was there. Like, everybody and their bloody dog was there, actually, at that point. Even Lockie had come home from the office, and he's sitting there going, "Oh, my God, this woman's having a baby. This is crazy." And it was really funny, actually, because I wasn't really aware, even though I knew there were people in the room.
Yeah, of course.
I was just so in the zone.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Abby wouldn't latch on. And so Mary checked her out and adjusted her. She needed a sacral adjustment. And then she latched on no problem after that, which was fantastic. Awesome. And then, so by 3:00 in the morning at the stage, everybody's kind of drinking tea and champagne. And I'm just like, happy baby. But it was interesting, actually, because I was still bleeding quite heavily. Mm-hmm. And I lost another 1,000 liters of blood. Oh. And the midwife freaked out. And I was just like, I am so not going anywhere. And she's like, "No, you really should go to hospital." I said, "Yeah, I'm not going anywhere." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Look, just let me be tonight. And if it doesn't cool down tomorrow, then I will go in and see what's going on." And of course, the next day we were okay. And, but my iron and my bloods were quite low. So I was constantly eating loads of high iron foods, apricots and almonds and stuff like that. And then, so the next couple of weeks went by pretty quietly, really. But I was consistently losing enormous amounts of blood. And really? They don't actually discuss afterwards that you are going to lose some blood as the rest of the placenta comes out. Because the placenta came out whole, beautiful, no problems at all with that. And but I was still bleeding very, very heavily. And so they were like, "All right, this postpartum hemorrhage, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, finally, we were going to go home in 6 weeks to Canada. And I said, I'm still bleeding really heavily, and I'm starting to get worried about flying. Yeah. But I went up to the hospital just to get checked out, and I was past the maternity stage at that stage, so they've sent me into the gynecology ward, and it was so filthy, and there was blood on the walls. The bins hadn't been emptied. Oh, God. And the doctor barely spoke English, and he stood like so far away from me. It was like he was afraid to be in the same room, and it was just so uncomfortable. And I just thought, I am so out of here. I am so not even taking my clothes off in this room. It's disgusting. And so I left. And so we flew home, and that was fine. And I was fine for another week. And then I had another massive blood loss. And my friend, Pat, that we were staying with, was an EMT. She's like, "Right, you're going to hospital." And I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll go." Mm-hmm. And so we go into the hospital in Nova Scotia. And I'm just like, "Oh, my God. You could lick the floors. They're so clean." And they have a totally different setup. It's all triage. So they have emergency medical tech, ambulance people on the front door, not nurses. And they decide the priority if you get seen. Mm-hmm. And because we're sitting there with a 6-year-old baby, they took us in 20 minutes. It was really great. Yeah. In an hour, I had all my tests done. They're like, "Oh, you're pregnant." I'm like,
What?
Like 6 weeks postpartum. I haven't even thought about sex yet. I'm holding the 6-week-old baby. And he's like, "No, well, you're pregnant." I was like, "That's so not possible." And so then they went, "Uh-oh." So they did an ultrasound, and then they said, "Okay, well, there's another placenta still kicking there. What happened with the placenta?" And I said, "It was whole. Everything was intact. Everything was great." He's like, "Well, you've obviously had a miscarriage." I'm like, "Okay." And that's when we realized that Abby had been a twin. And so,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. It was really, because I kind of knew that in the beginning because I had quite a big bleed about the 12-week mark. Oh. But because I didn't do any scans,
wow.
we weren't really sure until that point in time. And it was like, wow, because all the blood work. And then, so the next day they took me into surgery and had to clear it out. And they were amazing. They were so amazing, because here they would force you to do general anesthetic, whereas there they did a waking anesthetic. So I was completely aware of what was happening, and I was talking gobbledygook to the anesthesiologist. But I didn't feel any pain, and I was in and out of there in 2 hours. It was fantastic. And then home with Abby. So, and it was still 24 hours before I could breastfeed her again, because she kept just spitting the milk out because it was horrible.
Oh my gosh. So they did
level.
So they did like a DNC?
Yeah. So, and
was it just a small, it was actually another placenta?
Well, what was left of it, because most of it I had bled out.
Because at that point it was about 6-7 weeks or something?
Yeah, 6 weeks. So I bled most of it out. So it kind of, the tissue had blown out. So they had to go in and clear out the rest of the tissue and then seal where the connection was. So it was like, that was pretty mind blowing.
I wonder what would have happened if you didn't go in. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder what your body would have done if you didn't go in.
Well, I think, for the 6 weeks that I was there, my body was coping. And one of the things they were like, oh my God, your blood levels are so low. You need a what do they call it?
A blood transfusion or
a blood transfusion. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not having a blood transfusion. And they're like, okay, well, you need to sign here in case you die because your levels are so low. I'm like, it's been 6 weeks. I'm breastfeeding a baby. I'm still driving everywhere, walking everywhere, seeing my friends, flying to Canada. I think actually I'm coping quite well. I'm not in danger of dying. And then after that, I was able to actually, rather than just topping it up, just by using the foods and Floridex and high iron foods and stuff like that, I just topped it up quite quickly. And within 30 days, I was back to normal. Oh, yeah. So, which is great. Because there's time and a place for blood transfusions, but I think that they're too quick to pump it in. And, with all the issues with the energy and the DNA and personality stuff, and even with the heart transplants, like, that kind of freaks me out. So if I had to have done it, I still wouldn't have wanted to, but,
I mean, if you were like gushing out blood, I can see that, but you had been, like you said, you had been coping, you flew. You were breastfeeding, so it seems like So I think just being very conservative about my own approach to things, and just kind of really measuring the risks and the benefits, and really making almost an informed but a very intuitive decision about what felt like the right thing to do. And it sounds like you, at that age, you were quite intuitive and you knew what you wanted.
Well, I was 35, not 21. You know? So I think you kind of know your body quite well by then.
And you were also you had worked with midwives and doulas, and you knew quite a lot.
So I was in a much more fortunate position. And the more new mothers and first-time mothers I've seen over the last 17 years, I'm like, wow, that experience really paved the way to give me that strength, because I think awesome. Birth is so medicalized. And I think it's really frightening what happens to women when they lose control of their body. It's one thing to agree to something because it feels like the right thing to do. It's another thing to be railroaded into something. Yeah. So,
and that happens. You're the exception.
Well, the intervention pathway. Once you start down that road, you've basically abdicated control because there's no stopping the train. Which is really scary.
It is. It is. It's sick. It's scary, and it's just really frustrating. For us, because of what we know about how what can be done and what doesn't need to be done. And the problem is, most women, like you're the exception to the rule. Most women are going to be told, or they're going to choose to do it because they actually just feel like they don't have a choice, or they don't know what the right thing to do is.
I think you need to be a little bit bloody minded, and that can be really difficult when you're in the throes of things. One of my mum patients just had her 5th baby, and she went into hospital for the baby, and it was a really quick birth. But through it, she knew she was probably about 7 or 8 centimeters when she went in, and she knew that she was going to deliver very quickly. And she had this really inexperienced midwife who just passed her cannula test, who wanted to cannulize her just in case she went into surgery. And she's looking at her going, I'm having this baby in like 20 minutes. Get out of my way. You know? But she insisted. And of course, she's kind of in that transition stage, getting ready to push, and she just couldn't fight the battle. So she came home black and blue. Like we took in pictures of her. It's just crazy, you know, and that's an experienced mom. Yeah. But she just needed to go in the zone and just ignore the woman and have the baby. Yeah. You know, so she came out of there black and blue. It was awful.
Yeah. You know, it's, there's definitely something to be said about having the experience and knowing what's right for you and what's not right for you. Yeah. And, you know, like another example of that is when I was with my sister when she was having her baby. I basically acted like her doula / chiropractor during her delivery. And so we get to the hospital and she was nearly fully dilated. But the problem is the baby took a long time to descend, or she just was pushing for a long time. And the midwife ended up not being the midwife that she was assigned to, or the one that she had picked throughout the whole pregnancy, because her midwife was with another patient. So this other midwife was just had really bad energy, and it was about 2 hours in since we got there. And because she was fully dilated, the midwife was basically on panic mode. I mean, we're talking fight or flight. We need to call the doctor. And my sister and her husband had no idea. They had no measure they didn't know what to do. Like they would have just gone along with it. Do you know what I mean? And I just said, listen, the baby's heart is strong. Everything's, and I'm telling the midwife,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know that if I wasn't there, the doctor would have come in and they would have completely taken control. And my sister, being a first-time mom, would not have known what to do because they were throwing in the fear. You know, they were throwing in this this type of panicky. You have to do this because what if kind of languaging, and that happens probably. I mean, more than 9 times out of 10 births in hospitals, you know, because just in case. And you know, if I wasn't there, nobody would have stood up for my sister, and because I just said, no, you are not getting a doctor. She's fine. The baby is good. She's handling it. And sure enough, I was right. She gave birth naturally, no problems, no interventions, nothing. So yeah, you know, it's, I think that when women they just don't know, they don't have a doula or somebody who's experienced, or they don't have the experience.
Yeah. And the male birth partner, it's very nice to think that your man is going to be the one who protects you, but actually most of them just go to jelly because they think, oh my God, you're in pain, I need to save you.
Yeah, exactly. They go into protection mode. Like they're protecting the cave is what I call, you know, they want to make sure that their wife and baby are going to survive. So
they're safe. Yeah.
Exactly.
And they will give in far earlier than a doula or the woman once she catches onto herself and realizes this is painful. Mm-hmm. But I am not going to die of this, you know, and in our society, pain revolves around death and people are petrified of pain because pain sucks, you know, it does. Yeah. But birth has that rise and that fall and that rise and that fall. And when you're in that kind of wave pattern and you understand that the pain comes and the pain goes and the pain comes and the pain goes and then the baby comes, it's something different. It's a different headspace. So, and I think the first time, you know, it's such a hugely empowering experience. And there's obviously a place for the emergency cesarean, but the idea of elective cesarean in healthy mom and baby, I think it's dangerous because they treat it like it's just this easy operation, but actually it's major abdominal surgery, and women do die, and the maternal death rates are still really high. Mm-hmm. And the recovery is so long. Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting because one of my other moms had such a traumatic birth her first time round, and the second time round, She managed to do it on her own without meds. Her sister was acting as the doula, and she was so great. And she was like, oh, give me the pain meds. And her sister's like, nah, you're all right. You're all right. And then by the time it came around to going, please, she was like, the baby's head's here. And she did it all on her own. She was so proud of herself for doing that, but not just because she didn't have the meds, but more, she was so shocked at the difference in her recovery and how alert the baby was, how easy it was to breastfeed, the difference between the medicated and non-medicated birth. And, people make it like this badge of honor. It's not a badge of honor. It's hard on all of us. But the aftermath of the breastfeeding difficulties and the recovery for the mother, all of that revolves around the trauma and the medication use. And all of the stats show that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's awesome. So what happened with Holly's? It's
Holly's birth was really different. Holly was hilarious because I'd had a very, very heavy miscarriage in between them.
Oh.
So with Holly at the 12th-week mark, I did do a scan because I just wanted to make sure she was okay. And Jock was already gone at this stage, so I was on my own. And then.
That's right. So okay. So hold on a second. Sorry, I have all these questions. So can you talk about what happened with your miscarriage?
Sure. Yeah. I was pregnant in the January, and then around the 8-week mark, I had a really heavy dizzy spell, and thought something just doesn't feel right. And we went in to see a friend of ours who's an OB, and he did a scan. He's like, well, it's really early days and everything looks okay, but you never know. But then at the 12-week mark, I could feel that things weren't right. And I rang up Alex Grant, who's a chiropractor down here, who's the magic man. And I said to him, I think I'm going to lose this baby. And he's
so can you, sorry, I keep interrupting you.
Yeah, that's okay.
How can you describe what you felt? Like, what was it that didn't feel right? Like I know it's intuition, but like.
Yeah, I was going to say there wasn't symptoms other than I just knew something wasn't right.
Okay.
And even from the week 8, when I had that big dizzy spell and I was talking to the baby all the time, just saying, please stay and I love you and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of knowing that something just wasn't right. And when it kicked in, and I just had a really powerful feeling that week, and I rang Alex up and I said, Alex, I need to get adjusted. Something just isn't right. And he said, well, I can't stop the baby from going if the baby's going. I said, I know that, but I just need you to adjust me.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to cry.
It's all right. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
Oh, no, it's good. It's fine.
I can delete this part if you need to.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
I think it's really, I thank you for opening yourself up. I think that's really, really, it's just great to hear these stories, and for you to be so real about it. So,
well, Alex, I went to see Alex.
Yeah, and he's a chiropractor that, what did he have a specialty?
He's really energy based.
Okay, got it.
And he's just quite a magical guy. He's he's a very, just a beautiful man.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't working that day, but he came out and we met and he adjusted me. And then by the time I got home, I was losing the baby.
Okay.
But because of the adjustment, emotionally, I was able to cope with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and
I can see that totally.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for him for that. And so it was a good 24 hours of losing the baby. And I remember, because at that stage, the baby actually has form.
Yeah.
So it caught the baby when it came out.
Oh, really? You did?
Yeah.
So did you actually feel, you felt yourself go into labor and?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and buried it in the backyard and put a beautiful rose bush over the top of it and stuff. And
is it a girl or a boy?
It was a boy.
Oh.
And it was interesting because that's interesting, that point, because that was the beginning of the end of the marriage as well.
Oh.
And it's,
that's when it started.
Yeah, it just from what happened afterwards. Yeah, it was just like, wow.
Oh,
Okay.
I see.
So yeah, and it was crazy. And so, but afterwards it was interesting because then when I got pregnant with Holly, exactly a year later, or the 12 months later, because maybe it was before that, March when I lost the baby, and then it was December when I got pregnant with Holly, so less than a year. So I did a scan just to make sure that she was okay. But in the spring of that time, I was getting ready to move house, and the rose bloomed, one rose on that whole plant. And it was I have a picture of it, the most stunning, powerfully beautiful white rose I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. It was so kind of like, wow. It was really powerful. So it was a really nice thing for me to do for myself, just for that memory and stuff like that.
Wow.
So yeah, then afterwards, and it takes time, I think, when you lose a baby that you really want babies most of the time. They kind of come to you in shock,
Yeah.
But then when I was pregnant with Holly, I was so scared of losing her, and when I reached that 12-week mark, that's why I did the scan, because I just wanted to make sure. And even though it felt so different and I could feel how powerful she was compared to him, I knew that she was staying, but I was still really cagey about it, and I just took extra precautions to not get stressed, and, which didn't really work out very well in the middle of a divorce, but it was, I did what I could. She's a strong baby.
So you guys split up when you were pregnant?
Yeah, he left when I was 6 weeks pregnant.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You did tell me that when we first met. And, so you were pregnant, and Abby was how old at that point?
She was 2.5.
Wow. So you were pregnant. When he left, did he support you at all during your pregnancy, or was it kind of just like?
No, he was, it was really difficult because he was very controlling, and he was very wanting to, from his perspective, he was like, well, I'm not losing my children. And it's like, well, you're not going to lose your children. We're just not living in the same house anymore. And so it was quite difficult. And I had to really put a firm barrier and firm boundary around me to make sure that, I was okay. And I think in a lot of ways we were lucky because other friends who had been through it, we had positive role models. And I think when you go through a difficult divorce involving children, you need to be around other couples who have done it successfully. And we had that.
That's good.
So, and it was really nice. And I don't think Melissa would mind me saying it was Melissa and Wayne and Rob, because they went through a difficult time with all the kids and stuff. But as difficult as that was, they made it work for the benefit of the children. And so we had that role model of going, well, whatever's going on between us, it doesn't happen in front of the kids. And we made an agreement early on that we could, wherever the kids were, we could always contact them. We would never stop each other from being in touch with the kids. If I wanted to ring in the morning, and so if they were with him on a weekend or something, and just because I missed them, I could ring, and he would never stop that, and vice versa, which was a saving grace, really, because, through the whole custody issues and all that kind of stuff, it gets really personal and really difficult in the financial aspect. And at least with the kids, that was a level that happened beyond them and didn't involve them. And there were times, you're human and you shout at each other in front of the kids and you feel like crap afterwards, and the kids get upset, and, because you are human and there's only so much that you can manage. And you have to just kind of forgive yourself for the things that you can't always control. But for the most part, because of that positive role modeling, I think we navigated a lot of the really difficult times quite well.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
It's good that you sought that out. You knew that you needed to have that support because you knew you were in this area of unfamiliarity, and you needed to find some role models. So it's
and
good.
I could ring her up and go blah blah blah. She's like, "Oh my God, just let it go." Choose your battles was a really important one. And just kind of stand your ground when you need to, and on the other ones, you just need to let things slide over the things that really, in the grand scheme of things, are not going to matter. Don't be nitpicky or horrible just because you can be. Or just because you're cross, or those kind of things. And it was just kind of So it was a constant lesson in all kinds of things.
Oh yeah. And was he also okay? He was also talking to your friends, or was it mostly like you?
I think it was mostly me, I think, but he also had that opportunity because he knew them. And so, and I think the door was always open there. So I don't know what he would do, because obviously I wasn't in that confidence. But again, we both had that open opportunity to have those role models in front of us, saying that, things don't have to be bad.
Yeah, that's good.
This doesn't have to be bad just because we're not together. And I mean, couples break up all the time. It's not a big deal. But the stuff that happens afterwards is what leaves the marks. And that's where you have to really be more conscious of your behavior and not making it about the children, and doing, and decisions are hard to make because nobody wants to be without their children. Yeah. And I think, we've seen enough really bad situations, even in some of the parents here, where you're just like, what are you doing? I know you don't like him, but that's their father, and he's not a bad guy just because you don't like him anymore.
I don't understand that. Yeah. I don't understand that. I mean, I can't speak from experience, but I mean, we are all human. It's human nature to have those grudges and to resent, and I mean, there are obviously cases where, like really bad cases I've seen in practice where one of the parents has been abusing a child or something like that. That's different. Yeah. But I think when it's just a case of you were married, things didn't work out, that's okay. Yeah, that happens. But you do have to work on the aspect that children need both of their parents. It's not easy. It's never easy. And I remember the first time he went away for a couple of weeks with his girlfriend, and it was the first time in 3 years that he hadn't been on the phone every night. And it was just like this revolutionary feeling of freedom. And my God, because I hadn't realized how much pressure I'd been under with that. Like what kind of pressure? Well, just the constancy of, when you break up with a boyfriend, they go away and you don't have to ever see them again. But when you leave a marriage and you have children, they are in your life forever. Yeah. So you've got to find a way to make it work somehow for the sake of the kids, and actually I think it's a good growing experience for you as well. And I'm certainly not the person I was before I had kids. Which I think is a good thing, but, you kind of get your whole life broken open in so many different ways. And it just gives you so many different perspectives. It gives you humility. It gives you compassion. It gives you the ability to step into a painful space with somebody without having to take on the pain. And know that you can survive a lot of things that you didn't think you would. Yeah. So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. Yeah. And so you felt like this sense of freedom because all of a sudden you knew that.
Because all of a sudden I had emotional space and physical space and brain space. And I didn't know that I didn't have that until it was gone.
Isn't that interesting?
So, yeah. And it gave me a couple of weeks of headspace to shift my own thinking and get clear about what needed to happen next for me as well. So that helped.
So then, so I'm just curious, was he at Holly's birth, or did he?
He did, yeah. I had agreed to that early on, which was probably stupid. And part of me, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
I think on the day, like Holly was funny because, I mean, she's just so laid back. She's such an easy child in a lot of ways, despite the fact that she's ginger. Yeah, but she was transverse most of the pregnancy.
Oh.
So she just had her own way of doing things.
Yeah.
And again, I had planned a home birth. I was renting a place at this point, and I hadn't even engaged with the landlord over it because I was just like, I'm not going to ask anybody's permission to have my baby where I want to have it. And then, so about 40 weeks, I was still working.
Oh my God.
I know, because another girl was coming from Germany, and GCC had said she didn't have to do the exam because she had the chiropractic exam. And then they turned exam? Chiropractic is the German equivalent.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Yeah.
And then they changed their minds at the last minute. So same situation. I ended up having to work straight through the end because I didn't have anybody to cover.
Yeah.
And then this other lady, Susanna, had come and said, "Oh, I really want to come and work here." And it's like, "Oh, but I've already hired somebody for the maternity cover." And then it just worked out. I gave her a call a week later and just said, "Oh, can you come? This other girl can't come." And so Susanna came and worked with us for a while, which is amazing. Cool. And she ended up staying for a couple of years afterwards as well, which is even better.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And but then Holly, when I went into labor with Holly, I woke up about 7 a.m, had a massive emptying of my bowels and kind of went, "Oh, that was interesting." And then by about 10 o'clock, I knew I was in labor then.
Yeah.
And my mom had come to visit, which was really great.
Oh, from Toronto?
Yeah, because I think the due date was around the 6th of September. And Abby had just started preschool. So it was really exciting. I was like built like a house walking her to school every day. And some days I was like on my knees because you know that point where the baby's foot just kicks your cervix or a hand or something. And you're just like, "Oh my God, that's just so not right."
Yeah.
And so there are days I was just like, I'm not going to make it to school and back. But sure enough, she stayed in there. And my poor mom, she's like in her 70s. I dragged her out walking 2 hours a day and stuff like that. Just going, right, we need to take this baby out. So finally, 3 weeks later, so it was 43 weeks.
You were 43 weeks?
Yeah, I was 43
wow.
weeks. And people are like, "They let you go that long?" I'm like, well, I didn't really register for a midwife till I was 36 weeks. And so I didn't have any of the hassles of, have this shot, have that shot, blah, blah, blah. Because I wasn't going to do it anyway. So I just kind of, so it was 36 weeks and registered just so I could have a midwife at the birth.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't meet her again until I rang her that morning. And so I rang about 10 o'clock, I went into labor. About noon, I was in full-on labor. And so I rang her and said, "I think you better come." And so she came, and then Holly was born at 2.
Wow.
So
and she had
4 hours start to finish.
Nice. She had repositioned herself and head down.
It was like the midwife was like, "That was the most textbook birth I've ever attended."
Really?
Yeah, I was just on my hands and knees on the side of the bed. And I did 3 pushes, had a bit of Niagara Falls action. And but Abby was there. And again, every bloody dog was at this birth again. Doc was in the back of the room because I didn't want him near me.
Yeah.
And it was nice. And it was interesting because my mom kind of kept an eye on Abby, and I'm quite noisy with kind of breathing and talking to myself and stuff. And she's just wandered in and out. She fed her some lunch. She watched Bob the Builder. She'd come in, she'd eat some pears, say, "Mummy, drink, Mummy, drink." And then just as that last gush of water came out, and then Holly right behind it, Abby had come in, and as I sat back, because the midwife had the baby at this point, Abby came and crawled into my lap in the middle of all the water and the gush and everything. And she sat on my lap, her eyes, I'll never forget the look on her face, and the midwife handing me this howling baby. This beautiful pink baby, enormous, 9 pounds 3.
9 pounds 3, nice.
9 pounds 3. And Abby was just like, what the heck is that?
Oh,
Where did that come from? But it was so funny. And yeah, the midwife just asked me, she said, well, what are you going to name her? And I hadn't even considered a name. And
really?
Holly was the first thing that came to my mind, and that was Holly.
Oh.
So yeah, it was a fantastic birth. It was much more intense than the first one because I didn't have that warm up.
Yeah.
Because with Abby being, a good probably 16 hours in terms of just warming up to the end. Literally, I didn't get contractions till 10 o'clock in the morning, and then she was born at 2. So it was really intense.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was nice. And then afterwards, there's nothing better than being able to crawl into your own bed.
I know.
And I did. It was really funny actually. Because people were like, "Well, you got to eat something." And it's by the time everybody else cleared off, and I kind of sat down, had a shot of my single malt whiskey, and piece of pizza.
Nice.
But yeah, it was such a good experience. So.
Yeah. Oh. So, and your ex-husband, did you guys feel closer to each other after that, or was it?
No. I think we were just in a calm space at that stage because enough time had kind of passed from the original move and all that kind of stuff.
I see. Yeah.
And he stayed around afterwards for a while.
Yeah.
And kind of hung out with Abby and held the baby. And we have some nice kind of family pictures from then, which I wanted for the kids.
Yeah.
And his dad came over and, my mom was there and stuff. So it was nice actually. And again, when you're full to the brim of oxytocin, that just makes life so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just easy, and even the aftermath, I was tired. Obviously the first 6 weeks are really quite exhausting with the baby being up feeding all night. And then you've got a toddler as well. So it was kind of good timing that my mom was there, but also that Abby had her nursery in the mornings from 9 to 11. Mm-hmm. So there was a period of time where it was just me and the baby, where I could rest and sleep with the baby. And I was quite diligent about that. Mm-hmm. To make sure I got the rest, because sometimes, you just want to sleep and then you've got a toddler to deal with who wants all of your attention because the baby's asleep and you're not feeding the baby.
Yeah.
They want to be in for cuddles. They want you to read stories. And you're just like, I've barely got one eyeball open. So, that bit, it was exhausting at some points. And it was difficult because, again, when you live in a foreign country and you don't have any family, it was quite hard. And living in a newer area as well, I didn't have a lot of close friends. So it was a whole new journey on so many levels.
Yeah, so. Wow. That's pretty huge because you were also a practice owner.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were basically living as a single mom and then exhausted. And then also, I'm assuming that, so you had another associate or someone covering for your maternity.
Yeah, Susanna was there. Yeah, right. She was great.
So she was
again,
really good.
because of the practice, because I'd had those experiences of having maternity leaves and having things go wrong and having been deported, I didn't feel like I needed to ring in every day and say, how many people did you see? Did anybody miss an appointment? Blah, blah, blah. I was just like, you know what? These people are professionals. They're colleagues. They know what they're doing and they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I just had that real trust that I could just let go and everything that was meant to happen was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and it was just so much easier to do that because then I could just be 100% with the babies and not stress about the business.
Yeah.
And when I look at some of the American moms and colleagues of mine that have gone back to work at 6 or 8 weeks, I just like that just to me is just so traumatic. Even at 9 months, I struggled going back and I had to go back at that stage because things work-wise that was just what was happening at the time financially. And I was at that point because I took out a loan to stay home for a maternity leave. And that was kind of the end of that loan. And I knew I had to go back to work at that point. So, but I stretched it as long as I could, and I would have been devastated to have gone back at 9 weeks or whatever it was, even for a morning. Those early stages, when you look at all the psychology and the imprinting and the attachment, all of those things are really, really important, And I think if you have close family around you, like grandparents and people who will be as close to your babies as you are, it's different.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been like that. And it would, and to have had to put a baby into a nursery. And even when Abby was 15 or 16 months and she had gone to nursery while I was at work, it was hard. You walk in there and all these babies are on the floor. Nobody's holding them. Mm-hmm. Nobody's, nursery staff can only do so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they'd just be crying and nobody's comforting them. And it was just horrible. And I was like, I just can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Even being on my own, and again, we're in a fortunate position that I was just like, well, I'll just pay it back. When I go back to work, I'll just pay it back,
Yeah.
So
that's great. That's great that you just were able to, you made that choice because you knew that was the best thing for both Abby and Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's a financial hit, but big deal.
Right.
So I'm not going on a 2-week holiday somewhere like the Caribbean. That's fine. I made that choice because at the time I just wanted to be with the kids and be that solid, stable person in their lives.
Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah.
That's really great. I mean, it's also because you had your practice, because you know what you love and chiropractic is your passion, and you were very clear about your plan. That's the money side and the financial side of it is really like not an issue anymore because you just had a plan. I mean, it's one thing to not know what you want to do and just not have a plan and just kind of, that's a whole other element there, or that's a whole other game plan. But I mean, with you knowing your purpose and your passion, it's clear that you were able to handle it.
Yeah, I think sometimes it comes down to being clear on your values as well. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not irreplaceable. There are any other chiropractors who can walk into that practice and look after people as well as I can. Mm-hmm. It's not about me. And I think people, especially practice owners, get too attached sometimes to the practice. And I think that you have to be very clear on what your values are, and your family needs to come before your practice.
Yeah, that's really...
And if you're putting your practice members ahead of your family, you kind of need to sit down and think about that because, those people can go see anybody.
Yeah.
Your kids cannot just go see anybody. You are not replaceable to your children. Mm-hmm. So that was my value.
That's a huge, that's so true. That's a huge thing. I think it's easier for, I don't know, women chiropractors to recognize that.
Well, I think it is because they get trapped in that almost a masculine world of just needing to prove themselves and needing to work and needing to do this.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to, again, is that you need to decide what your values are and live your life according to your own values. Mm-hmm. And if your values are your career is going to come ahead of your family, then you need to make some decisions around that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, you're going to work for 60, 70 years. But those kids are not going to be small for long, and the early years of that stability and the attachment and the security and the self-esteem, all of that are the early years experiences.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Because
it does go fast, right?
It goes too fast.
It does.
It goes too fast. Yeah.
And so now Abby is 11.
She will be 11. She starts high school in September.
Oh, yeah. Same thing. My eldest is same age, 2006, born 2006.
Yeah. It's scary, isn't it? Because you're like me. Like the kids don't start high school till they're like 14 over there.
Yeah.
11 is so young.
No, I know, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I remember going into high school at age 14 and thinking that I was so little. Just looking at the 17 and 18-year-olds walking in the hallways of the school. I was just like, oh my God, they were like huge. Like some of the guys, like on the football teams, like American football teams and basketball teams, they're massive. But now our kids are our girls are going into a school where it's enormous. And then you've got 17 and 18-year-olds walking around. It's kind of weird to me.
It's scary. And I think I don't know, from a North American perspective, looking at the UK as having in the Western world, one of the highest teenage pregnancy rates.
Is it really?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, I think it's a big part of it because you're mixing 11 to 14-year-olds with, 15 to 18-year-olds. And that's a dangerous mix.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's just too much too soon.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so you've got 2 daughters, and that is, you're probably starting to talk to, well, you probably have started, because I have for a while, about puberty, and my daughter's actually starting to ask questions and
Oh yeah, we're in it.
Yeah, totally, right? What's going to happen to my body, and why do I feel like this? And and it's actually, I'm really enjoying the beginnings of this journey, or this discovery for her, because at least I know that I didn't have this kind of attention to that part of my life from my parents.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean, I think it might be a generational thing. I don't know. I mean, I can only speak from my experience, but I just think that there was nothing. I mean, between school.
I think 70s parents were just not present. We were the wild children, because we really, from the age that we could stand up, we were just kind of left to our own devices.
Yeah.
And, you came home when the street lights went on.
I mean, right?
Your parents didn't know where you were, what you were doing. They didn't care if you had dinner,
Exactly.
It was totally a different style of parenting entirely.
Yeah. I mean, you're 7, 8, 9 years old, and you're out after school with, Susie down the street or something.
Yep.
And or maybe it's not Susie, but yesterday it was Susie, and today it's Melissa,
Oh yeah. No, it's completely different style of parenting, different time. Yeah.
And now, it's such it's so different, but I think it's so important to really communicate and be open, especially to our daughters, and and boys as well, because I have a boy. But
we have a friend down here who runs the Red Tent community, and she runs special kind of ritual days for young girls who are first going through their periods for the first time, which is totally kind of like a hippie thing, but I love it, and I love the idea of having rituals. Like with Abby, her first real little ritual was that we said when she was begging to get her ears pierced for years. We said, well, when you're 10, you're double digits, you can get your ears pierced anytime after that. So it was probably about 6 months after she turned 10, she decided she was ready. And so it was a big thing for her to go down and get her ears pierced and, experience that, having made the decision, having chosen the time, having, and it was just really lovely thing for her to do for herself with our support.
Yeah.
And then again, when she comes on into womanhood, being able to celebrate that a little bit, it's not something that's terrible and bad and, but something that is tied to how she nurtures her own body. Because so many people that are just suffering all the time with periods, and there are ways to not suffer, and that it doesn't have to be terrible. It doesn't have to be this roller coaster. If you look after yourself, you look after your nutrition, you get your adjustments, you get, all of those things that nurture your body through the changes that you go through, in that monthly cycle, and that you get to know yourself. And it's a way of getting to know yourself and appreciating who you are on so many levels and not be afraid of it.
That's just, to me, I wonder what it would have been like back then. I think, what does it look like for a girl at age 12 or 13, whenever she has her first period, to understand the menstrual cycle and what's happening to their bodies and the different stages of the cycle? I mean, that's enormous. The difference and the confidence level and the self-respect and self-love of their bodies, that would totally change the world, because
it does. And I think because a lot of mainstream people with girls that are out of balance nutritionally, who have a lot of pain or who have really heavy periods because there's too much estrogen in the system, and trying to bring the balance back into their body from a non-medicated point of view. So most of them will just go down and see the GP, and they'll just take Midol or ibuprofen or the pill to
exactly.
regulate things.
They'll just start to
and it's so
the pill.
scary.
Yeah,
and which again reinforces that thing where that's okay. There's a pill to fix it.
Yeah,
which again makes them take a step back from their bodies rather than stepping into who they are and knowing what they need and recognizing what they need.
Exactly.
So, yeah. It's a totally different way of looking at things. And again, it's that inside out thing versus the outside in.
Yeah. I definitely want to check out the Red Tent. I want to contact her and see if she wants to be on the podcast, because I think.
You know what? Mandy would love that. She's great.
Oh, really?
I'll link you guys up.
She must have.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it would be like a really great, like sort of like a special episode, because I really want her to not only talk about what she teaches or what she's lecturing, but how did she get into it? And it's just fascinating to me. I love it. I love that stuff. So
yeah, you'll love her. She's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
So, I mean, just wrapping up, you've learned so much, you've gone through so much in your, you're learning about labor and birth through your experience before you had children, and then having your 2 home births, and then like going through a pretty challenging divorce, and now you're a single mom. I mean, mothers who listen are probably mothers that are in a similar situation, and just are there any bits of advice or any like little pearls of wisdom that you want to share?
Oh God, where do you start?
I know.
Where do you start?
I know. I'm sorry.
I think it comes back to the values question. I think you have to be very clear on what your values are.
Yeah.
Because if your needs aren't met, there's always going to be chinks in the foundation. And I think that for you to have a solid foundation and really get clear on who you are, once you're kind of there with that, everything else just kind of has its own place. And you can recognize very quickly that, is this going to support me or is this going to stress me? And the things that you lean towards, there are things that you can't avoid that you have to do, which can be very stressful. And you just need to call on extra support, or even for your own self, do the self-nurture thing where you pull back and you do some meditation, you do have a bath, go for a walk. For me, sea swimming is a huge thing.
Oh, cool.
And just recognize that sometimes you need to step back before you can see what needs to happen. And I listened to this beautiful TED talk the other week that somebody, I think Joe Tilley had posted, from one of the Hawaiian free divers. And she said, for one of those things when you think you need to speed up is actually the sign that you need to slow down and take a step back.
What's the name? What's her name?
I can't remember. I'll send it to you because I can't remember her name.
Oh, right. Okay.
The Hawaiian National Free Diving Champion.
Okay.
But she's a beautiful speaker, and she just was so clear about that need and that lesson that, everybody thinks you need to drive yourself and do more and more and more and more. But actually, you need to step back. You need to get the balance and really do the things that are important. And the other things will look after themselves. And you just need to kind of catch yourself that you are not 50 people, you are one person. And, you need to be able to just keep the core of what's important to you, which is your family, your kids' mental health, their balance, their nutrition, their adjustments, all of those things, all of your own stuff and the things that feed your spirit and your soul. And then anything else that happens outside that circle, great. But if you've got that bit right, life is pretty good, actually. So, but it takes time to give yourself permission to do that, because people make people feel bad that, you're not doing enough of this, or you're not doing enough of that, you're not giving enough of this. And it's like, well, you choose who you give to, you choose where your energy goes. So. Yeah,
that's great. So what's next for you? Like your girls are good. Like, what are your practice is good. I know you're focused on your house right now.
Yeah, trying to fix the house. Just working more, just getting back in balance with more of the pediatric side of things, and sharing more of that, which is great. And I'm kind of writing a book for the practice on that pediatric side, from some of the parenting experiences, and just, I don't know, I think messages, don't be so hard on yourself, really, which is easier said than done.
Of course.
But yeah.
That's awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here, taking your time to have this awesome conversation.
Well, thanks for having me.
If you'd like to reach out to Maryellen Stevens, you can email her at maryellendc@family-chiro.co.uk. Also, check out her website and fantastic blog, family-chiro.co.uk, and look at the show notes for more information. If you like this episode and any others, please, I would love it if you help me out and posted a review. I'm on a mission to help other women and mothers, and I'm asking you to help me out by subscribing and posting a very simple, brief, and positive review. Thanks again. I'm Marianne Shiozawa, and remember, when you're in a funk or you feel bad because you just yelled your head off at your kid, I promise you, we all do it. Just know that you really are doing great, Mom. I'll see you next week.